Because when you're ahead, you say, I'm ahead because I'm better. I'm ahead because of the God I believe in. I'm ahead because of some kind of intrinsic superiority, a lot of white supremacy, a lot of religious supremacy. All sorts of reasons have been given in the last 250 years by Europeans and Americans about why they naturally run the world. So we're at the end of that Western-led world.
大家好，我是老吴，今天和大家分享一段这两天的最新访谈片段，主角是美国知名经济学家杰弗里·萨克斯教授。萨克斯教授是那种非常敢讲真话的学者，他在这段对话里提出了一个非常尖锐也非常深刻的观点，来解释我们今天所处的这个混乱的世界。他说，我们现在看到的所有冲突，无论是美国对中国的敌意，还是对俄罗斯的打压，其根本原因并不是什么安全威胁，而是一种心理问题。这种心理来自几百年殖民历史留下来的优越感和种族主义。萨克斯直截了当地指出，当西方看到中国不仅在经济上赶了上来，还在很多前沿科技上开始领先，那么这种成就本身就成了对西方霸权的侮辱。这已经快把美国的政治精英给逼疯了。那萨克斯教授是如何从历史的角度一步步来得出这个结论的？我们一起来听听他的分析。
Well, first, let me say, just to clarify one major point. The West is not in decline. The rest of the world is catching up. So from a historical point of view, modern economic development, meaning the Industrial Revolution, the industrial age of the 19th century, then the age of electricity, the age of the automobile, now the age of information and the digital age, was led initially by the North Atlantic, what we call the West. Britain was the first industrialized country. Britain was the place where the steam engine created industrialization. Now, it was in the 19th century when the gap between the West, so-called, and the rest widened considerably. And that came partly because of the advances of technology, literacy, science in the Western world, and the imperial domination that brought over much of Asia, and by the end of the 19th century, all of Africa. So the West widened its lead, both through its economic and technological advances, but also the brutal age of high imperialism of Europe in the 19th century, and indeed until the middle of the 20th century. At the end of World War II, Europe had basically battered itself to death in two civil wars in the first half of the 20th century, and that opened the way for the colonized parts of the world to gain their political independence. And that happened, of course, in the late 40s and the 1950s, and then stretched out into the 1970s, and in some cases the 1980s, depending on whether the European powers fought wars to try to keep their colonies or let them go through exhaustion or for other reasons. But in any event, from the second half of the 20th century, countries were independent for the first time, typically in more than 100 years. And what did they do? They began to catch up. First thing they did was engage in education, which the European imperial powers did not offer to most of their subjects, certainly not in any quality that would enable their colonies to achieve economic development. I raise all of this because what has happened is a normal process where Asia and now Africa and other parts of the non-Western world are achieving economic development by raising educational standards, most fundamental part of economic development, building infrastructure, and in many cases, and China's of course the most notable in the world, moving from catching up to moving forward by becoming great innovators of new technologies on their own. So this is a normal process. It's a healthy process. It's a good process. It's driving the Western world nuts, especially with our nutty government in the United States. Why? Because the Western world came to believe in its superiority over several centuries. Because when you're ahead, you say, I'm ahead because I'm better. I'm ahead because of the God I believe in. I'm ahead because of some kind of intrinsic superiority, a lot of white supremacy, a lot of religious supremacy. All sorts of reasons have been given in the last 250 years by Europeans and Americans about why they naturally run the world. So we're at the end of that Western-led world. And truth be told, it's not only the United States that's crazy, it's also Europe. They don't want to give up these advantages because they came to believe, and again, for a lot of reasons, some absolutely vulgar, some mistaken ideas, some sophisticated fallacies, the belief, for example, that Max Weber proposed that it's Protestantism that would be the key for economic success. So even the Catholic regions of Southern Europe would not be able to catch up. All of these reasons led to a mindset that I think is still very much alive in Europe and the US. An air of superiority, a belief that how dare the Russians threaten us. They're not quite us. They're not quite Europe. And China, my God, the deep antipathy to China is shocking to me. I believe basically it's racism in the end because it's widely held. It is taken for granted in the United States, especially in the political class, of course. But it's a part of our deep-seated history. Already by the 1880s, there were anti-China laws on Chinese migration. The racism and antipathy has been there for a long time. And now that China really is a rival as innovator in the world, definitely has surpassed the United States in industrial output by quite a large margin, is the low-cost producer of much of what the world really needs, whether it's zero-carbon energy, the new electric vehicles, 5G digital technologies. China's just wonderfully adept, competitive, and innovative. And this is really driving the political class crazy in the United States. How dare they? The insult to the Western dominance. So to my mind, your question is really a question of almost psychology that is not grounded in actual facts about security or threats, but rather is an attitude issue. And if you ask me, what does America First stand for? It stands for America first and dominant. And what Trump exposes every day, by the way, in a cruder and cruder and more dangerous way, is his belief that he can post something on Truth Social and the world has to respond to it. And that he can give orders to Putin, or he can give orders to Xi Jinping, or he can give orders to Lula, or he can give orders to the BRICS, and everybody's going to fall in line. That's his real belief. It's at a personal level rather crude, but it's kind of in the air in Washington that, oh, yes, multipolar, Marco Rubio says these things once in a while in speeches, but really America is going to tell the world what to do. And what's problematic right now is the rest of the world isn't going to follow the U.S. line. And we have a president that is out of control of law in the United States. He just issues executive decrees. He issues orders every day. The Supreme Court has basically said, we're not going to stop him. Congress has said, we're pathetic. We have nothing to do with this. And so we have one person, nearly an octogenarian, who has delusions of American power, who is giving orders every day to the world. The orders change by the hour. The rest of the world is, some are trying to say, yes, please, we love you, we respect you, we honor you. But in fact, a lot of the world follows President Lula's line, although President Lula's just about the only one with the gumption to say it. He said last week, we don't want an emperor, period. And he meant it. And when the United States, not the United States, by the way, when Donald Trump responded by saying, okay, Brazil gets 50% tariffs, President Lula said, okay, we have a reciprocity law, we retaliate. We don't want an emperor. This is where we are this week. It's rather shocking. It's rather amazing. It's not, let's live in a multipolar world, let's make peace, let's make business, let's get along. It's more dangerous than that right now. It is an erratic leader that it has no institutional control, who both exemplifies and exacerbates this Western delusion of power over the rest of the world, something that is past. It's already passé. It's already an anachronism. It was true, by the way, for 200 or 250 years, but it ain't true today. And this conflict between the perception and the reality is very dangerous.
好，萨克斯教授的这段分析就到这里。他说的非常直接，也非常刺耳，但正是这种直白，彻底撕下了西方，特别是美国所谓自由民主和国际秩序的伪装。他点出了背后那个最真实也最丑陋的核心，一种过时的帝国主义优越感。在萨克斯看来，世界并不是西方在衰落，而是其他国家正在正常的追赶。但正是这种追赶，让习惯了当人上人的西方精英彻底失去了心理平衡。他们既接受不了世界在变化，更接受不了其他文明的成功，所以他们本能的把中国的崛起当成一种威胁，甚至是一种侮辱。而特朗普就是这种失衡心态最极端的产物，他把西方精英骨子里的傲慢和偏执，赤裸裸地搬上了台面，用最粗暴的方式表现了出来。可以说，萨克斯教授的这番话给我们提供了一个非常深刻也非常犀利的视角，一种对当代国际秩序的心理解剖。好，今天的内容就到这里，感谢大家的收看，我们下次再见。